Do you need encouragement to turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Perdue.
Hey, we're live. We are live. We tried this last week and something was going on with StreamYard. Hey, but we're live now and ready to go. All right. So today, our guest, he has been in military, going to talk about his deployment, and then he used his traits and everything, became a best writer, publisher, author, and we're going to go from there. So welcome to the show, G. Michael Hopf.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm glad that I can hear and see you, and we're doing this live finally.
Finally got this to go.
Yes, sir. Yeah, now I appreciate it again. And again, like I told you last week as we were talking, I appreciate your service. And again, the people before you, people today, people in the future, all of you had made it where it's easier for people like me to be able to contribute in this world.
Well, I appreciate that. I always like to say though too, I'm appreciative of my country for giving me the opportunity.
There we go. So when I was teaching and coaching for a while, my best friend, we coached together and we've become best friends as teachers and coach. He was in military, the Guard, and so he ended up signed up with another group and ended up going to Afghanistan and got to participate, be there for a year out there, so deployed. So again, appreciates his service and all of you. Again, it's not that long ago that things are a little weird, especially with people like me being disabled. So, all right, and also on the big benefit, I told you this is our 250th podcast. All right, give it to me. I got to high five me somewhere. Let me see. Hold on. Let me give you a fist bump here. All right. So,
well, congratulations on that. That's a nice milestone.
That is a nice milestone, and it's also beginning. This is the first show of our fifth season doing this. So I enjoy that I get to meet people like you, and people are tired of hearing me. So I want to get y'all's stories out and go from there. And so that's the main reason of starting this. So, all right, G. Michael Hopf, let's go ahead and get started here. And I'm interested in some of your deployment, and definitely want to go find out more about how you became your best author and publisher and things like that.
Okay. Well, I'm just a simple guy. I grew up back east, East Coast. Grew up on a farm. Really good childhood, really, and it was a kind of non-working farm, but really, there's a bunch of land. Anyway, I really good childhood, but I got good grades. Could have gone to college. I decided against it at the time because I just had this itch in me to go see the world, and so I thought the best place to do that and seek adventure was the United States Marine Corps. So I enlisted and right out of high school, and and I just didn't just go in just the military or just any what they call military operational specialty, MOS. I wanted to kind of be part of an expeditionary force, kind of the tip of the spear, so to speak. So I joined the infantry, and that was an incredible experience. 6 years, 3 deployments, saw a lot, did a lot. Went to the Middle East, had some interesting times over there. And overall, my military experience shaped me and to the person that I am today, gave me a great perspective of the world. I think it's a very important institution. And I encourage young men and women to pursue it. If that's something they want, they will see and do things that few will or can.
Oh, yeah. So of course, I never got into the military, never joined, but I have left our country to go over to Africa and in the Madagascar area and the Grand Comore Islands. And so, and when you get into the third world, that you live a lot different than what we do today. And I believe people ought to just travel to these other countries so let them remember how good we have it.
I agree, because again, it's everything's about perspective. I think people lose sight of how wonderful and beautiful and how protected they are, how free they actually really are in the United States. And I think it's incumbent upon them to travel. And this is more so than Mexico. And a lot of people, I go to Mexico, but most people go to Mexico to get street tacos and drink, cervezas. Going to Africa, I've been to Africa myself, the east coast of Africa, Somalia and Kenya. But you go to these places, you see just how they are. They're beautiful in many ways. The people are usually really beautiful, wonderful people, interesting cultures. But yet, as far as the system of government and the laws and the protections that we have, they typically don't. It's not as if they can't, and a lot of them are working towards that. They're developing countries, but we definitely are blessed to have what we have. And again, I highly encourage people to travel abroad. They come back usually, just like when people travel to space, they always come back from space and they have a completely different perspective based on what they've seen. And so I definitely highly encourage anybody to get outside of themselves, to get uncomfortable, to go overseas and see what's going on.
I agree with you. To me, the wild thing for where we went was, again, in between the east coast of Africa and Madagascar, there's 4 islands there called the Grand Comore Islands. And we had to go on 2 of those islands. The first one was paradise. The blue waters crashing, the sandy beach, and the 4-star or 5-star hotel that we have today is probably a 2-star over there, but it was their 4-star, the big, but it was just beautiful over there. We went to the next island. It looked like a war zone. There was totally 2 different islands, even though they're together, all 4 of them. And the second island, you could set your watch by the time at 1:00 every day. Electricity shut off in that part of the island, just shut off, and then it comes on about dinner time, about 5:00 or so, and then it shuts off again like 2 a.m. and it's back on again 6 or 7 in the morning. And they said they had to conserve that electricity, that energy, because not everybody was rich enough to, afford to pay the electric bill. And so to conserve it for everybody to get use, it turns off, back on, off, back on. Like, you can set your watch for it. And that was amazing from 2 different islands. The other first part it was on had no problem with it. It just went on. So
that's a great illustration and a great example. And I think most people in this country and a lot of Western nations, whether it's Western Europe, Canada or whatnot, they have kind of a normalcy bias. And it sounds like we can go down a completely different rabbit hole of a conversation here, but it's a normalcy bias concept. And it's what I find sometimes troubling when people get upset about, listen, the United States isn't perfect. Yet it's pretty darn special when you look at the world and what we have and how we've been able to get to where we are. And a lot of people, they either are just ignorant or they just have deluded themselves or gaslit themselves into believing that we're just this horrible, horrible place.
Yeah.
And I find that most of these people are usually the former. They're ignorant and they just don't have the experience or perspective of what the world actually is, nor understand the history of how we've gotten to where we are based upon our system of government and based upon our economic system. Anyway, this is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with you that where they are allowed to, because of you and others, to vocalize their disapproval. Again, the United States not perfect, as you say, but again, vocalize your opinion in another country and see what would happen to them. And
Yeah, and it's
and
somebody.
it,
It's not
it
just. It's
yeah.
not even just to the military. It's not just that. It's just all of us collectively as a culture. What we've created. We've created a from our founding to where we are today. Um, a incredible culture that values individual freedom and liberty. That values life, and it should be cherished. And I think people don't have a historical understanding of the world
Hmm.
and what it was like, much less even our founding and how that even came to be and what was actually happening in the world. Again, I think it's this kind of normalcy bias, and it's a massive glaring hole in our educational system of just pure ignorance.
Hmm.
Uh, to know that when our founding occurred, we were the only democracy at that time when when we successfully rebelled. That they don't understand that the world was a collection of monarchies and dictatorships,
Hmm.
feudal systems that have been around for centuries upon centuries, and not since I think not since the Greeks had some form of a democracy existed. And so even you can even say Rome in some regards too. Rome was a republic at one time, but it's a little. But I don't want to. Again, we're going down a different rabbit hole
Yeah.
of what this podcast is about. I mean, it could be a fun whole conversation we could have another time. But I don't want to take away from any of that because I find that's why I think the military offers more value for the country versus giving its young versus saying providing a defense for young men and women. It gives them the ability to learn a lot about themselves, to get good training
Hmm.
and various things, to have adventure, and also gives them perspective because they get to see the world and they usually get outside of themselves and have a greater purpose. So I think the military is overlooked often. It's appreciated, but yet I think it's
Yeah.
overlooked because people, I think instinctively want to push people towards education, which I think is fine. But there's an education that people also don't get, and that is the education of how the world is actually operating, what's really going on. So, well, all these things come together, though, whether it's the military or educational system, doctors, professors, teachers, firemen, HR people, we're all a collection called a society that we need to be cohesive and work together. And then we have this nation state right now. So I'm a big believer, not just because I was in, just because I think it offers a lot more value than just the protection of the nation state.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of benefits where you're going to see. So I would love the travel part. I don't know about the you've been deployed and you've been in the war zones.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I wouldn't have been a big fan of that. But I know that goes along with the territory. But I
Yeah.
would have loved the travel.
Yeah, there's and that's in and of itself in its own educational experience.
Yeah. So
And shapes people. So
yeah. So all right. Well, interested. So let's move on a little bit. We get through. You got into your military. You said you started right out of high school. Was that around? Well, I'm assuming you're older than the 2001 September 11th.
yeah. So I
9/11.
was in the Gulf War. So my first deployment was over to. I first went to. We sailed from Camp Pendleton. We went to Okinawa on what they called a unit deployment program. We're going to be in Okinawa, Japan, for 6 months. But like no sooner we had got there than Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait and all this stuff was going
Mm-hmm.
on. The rest is history, so to speak. But we were in Okinawa a couple weeks, and we had already deployed from there on ships to head over to the kingdom to provide defense for it. And so we got into the kingdom. I think it was like early September. That's when we arrived, and there was like nobody there except us and I think the 82nd Airborne.
Yeah.
And so we got into the kingdom, and we were there and all the way through to the invasion of Kuwait and the liberation of it eventually. So, yeah, that was an interesting experience. And then I did two other deployments after that. One was what they call a Westpac deployment. Went around the world on ships. Went back to the Middle East again for some other operations. Went to East Africa. Did an operation in Somalia. And then, anyway, so I did a lot of deployments, saw a lot of things. I spent half of my enlistment pretty much deployed overseas.
Okay. Yeah. I met last year. Met my my half brother for the first time, and I was 60 and he was 56. 4 years of difference. My dad and mom divorced before my first birthday. Of course, he remarried, and we knew. I guess we knew of each other. We just never reached out, being he was divorced from dad's was divorced. But he passed away years ago, and so his son on his other family reached out to me last year, and got to meet with him. And he had been to Afghanistan and stuff, and had signed up. And he was. I grew up wanting to be a professional athlete, just enjoy it. Like I said, I just wasn't into the military, but he said he got to do what he loved playing with his GI Joes and little army men, on his floor when he was 8 and 10 years old, and got to become that. And so, again, thank Bobby for his service as well. All right. So you've gone through this and everything. I guess now you, retired, and now you decided to write. And then not only did you write, you become a best-selling author, and now you got your own publishing company.
Yeah. After my military experience, I actually wasn't done with adventure, so I went on to become a commercial diver, like underwater construction work for a couple years.
That would be cool too. I would love
that. Was a
see
really
what's
cool
down
experience
in that water. Yeah.
Yeah, that was again, I still had a lot of I felt like after 6 years I'd kind of done what I'd really wanted to accomplish in the military. I'd done quite a bit in 6 years. Been a lot of places. Yes. And but I still wasn't done with
what's the old motto? Do more before 4 o'clock, before people get out of bed.
Exactly. So, yeah, I'd done a tremendous amount. I mean, gosh, when I'd gotten out, I was 23 years old. Is that right? No, I was 24 years old when I had gotten out, and I had been everywhere. A tremendous amount of life had been lived for a 24-year-old. Mm-hmm. I would say much more than most 24-year-olds.
Oh yes.
Had the privilege of got out as a sergeant, so I'd been a squad leader, so I'd been the leader of men, and precarious situations, things like that. So by the way, that's something I want to touch on. This is something I think so valuable about the military too. Uh-huh. Maybe this will become a military podcast.
No, just go ahead, do your thing.
And that is, it's so often here today, people don't trust responsibility in the hands of young people. And the fact is, we should trust them because they are capable. Young people are capable of tremendous amounts of responsibility if we allow them to do it. Yes, they'll make mistakes, but there's learning in those mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's growth in those mistakes. And like when you look at the average age of, like, say, a B-17 bomber pilot in World War II, it's like 19 years old.
Yeah. Wow.
And then when you look at the fact that and by the way, that hasn't changed in the military. When you look at, maybe for pilots, yes, but when you look at, like, who's actually leading in the battlefield on the small unit level, they're 20-year-old men, 21-year-old men are leading other men into battle, making decisions that are truly life and death. But yet back in the States, we coddle our young people. We won't give a 20-year-old, the responsibility of running a copying machine. Yet we turn around and give a rifle and give weapons to 20-year-olds and send them off to battle, and then give them tremendous amount of responsibility, which they are capable of. And I think that is overlooked a lot. And I think this is why our society can look toward the military and go, yes, we do have very capable young men and women. We can put a lot of responsibility in their hands. And that outside of the military, we just need to have them tested. When I mean tested, not like formally educational academic testing, but test their character, test them in situations, because I think they can handle it if we give them that responsibility. So I think that's really important. I think it's overlooked so often. But so jump back, I do commercial diving, and then I get out of that and I become a bodyguard, do that for over a decade as an executive protection agent. Yeah. And then finally I needed to kind of get out of that. And so I moved to Idaho for a period of time, got into some other things. And that's where my entrepreneurial spirit was born, was in Idaho. And I got into doing some business and entrepreneurial stuff. And then came back to San Diego, continuously being a business owner and entrepreneur. And then one day, I think I was 41 when I published my first book, which was a children's book, by the way.
Okay.
And that kind of sparked the creative in me. And then in 2013, I released my first novel, and everything took off from there. The books did incredibly well. And I am where I am today now. I've got 40 novels of my own. I'm a USA Today best-selling author, an award-winning author. I've got books with major publishers, as well as I also am a self-published guy too. Like they call it a hybrid author. And then I've got several different companies, one publishing company, two publishing companies, really one's more of content creation farm. And then another kind of foreign language translation company. These are all kind of adjacent to and complement publishing and writing and authors and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but let me go back here for a second. When you were talking about the young men and women, are much capable of running, than most people give them credit for. Here they are with all the weapons and leading the troops and everything. And the things popped in my head when you were talking of that is the multi-million-dollar tanks and planes and ships that they're controlling. But yet, like you said, they won't let them run a $5,000 copy machine because they're worried about them messing something up. But yet we're in control of this $1 million plane, multi-million-dollar tanks and everything. Those helicopters, that are so sophisticated and everything. So you just blew my mind with all that, because I never really thought it was like that. But you're exactly correct.
Well, because when you look at what sets our military apart from, say, when we were during the Cold War, we were going against the Soviet Union and what they called the Warsaw Pact nations. So it was NATO against Warsaw Pact. And when you look at the Warsaw Pact kind of military doctrine, it was essentially very centralized at the top. Okay. And they didn't really allow their young, what we call non-commissioned officers, they're called NCOs. These are corporals and sergeants.
Yeah.
To do make any kind of command decisions. But in NATO and the military doctrine of the United States and other Western nations, part of NATO, we have top-down leadership. And so you have leadership on the small unit level, where you can send out a small unit, a fire team or a squad, and you might have an officer there, but you're talking more like a first or second lieutenant sometimes, butter bar. But lots of times they're just led by corporals and sergeants. And these, again, are going to be young men or women that are doing major operations. They're given the command of what they do. So if they're given an objective, that objective is created, that mission is created on a higher level, but then it's disseminated down to them, and then they're expected to carry that out. So on small unit levels, you'll have, again, 22-year-old corporals and sergeants making life and death decisions and carrying out missions on a small unit level. And it's incredible. And I've seen it. I was part of it, myself, doing things, and it's fantastic. And it just, again, it's always shown me that you can trust young men and women to do things that are big. So I think and again, it's more than just handling equipment. It's just the overall responsibility. They actually can handle it, and they have, and they actually have the mental fortitude. I know there's a lot of this talk, and you see a lot of wailing, young people crying. They seem to emotionally imbalanced, but the fact of the matter is they can handle it. They're actually very emotionally resilient. You just have to trust them. Stop treating our young people like children.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, we could give them more responsibilities, and I agree, and let them step up to help out.
And they will. And maybe there may hurt things. There's some that may not, but many will step up. And what that does, it gives them, when you're given a task that's really big, and then you accomplish it, or at least you get somewhere there, you build confidence.
Yes.
right? And then what you do is you do it again and again, and you're stacking confidence on top of it. And then you have a 23-year-old young man or woman who's very confident in themselves as an individual that they can do things. But we need them to do things though, and we need them to also fail at things.
Mm-hmm.
And failing is the concept I talk about. You got two different words, failing and failure, right?
Yeah.
So failing is present tense. You're doing something and it's not working out. That's okay. That's okay. Some things don't work out. Most things don't work out sometimes. But you learn from that. And not everything is going to work out. And so, by the way, there's a lesson in the failing that thing isn't working out. So let me adjust, think critically, adjust, adapt, and then move around that obstacle. Only when it gets to the word failure, which is past tense, that means that individual has given up. They went from failing to a failure.
Yeah.
So the common thing, the common thread, or the common, I guess, if you were to distill it, what determines failing to failure is the individual themselves typically. They choose to allow that event to become permanent. Yeah. And then they become a failure. So I'm a big believer, and maybe this is, we talk about, your podcast is on perseverance and overcoming adversity and things like that. One thing I'd always tell people, just never quit. Just don't quit. You have an idea of whatever you're pursuing out there, it may not, as you're trying to go, when you're on that road, that journey towards your goal, it may not look like you think it's going to look, but that's okay. Keep having the bigger picture in your mind of what you want. What's that final goalpost, right? It's just like when you're on a trip, right? You're trying to go from A to B, and you've plotted a route to go from A to B, and it looks like this straight line, I'm going to go there. Well, guess what? Just like in life, there can be some potholes where the bridge is closed. Now you've got detours. Do you stop when you see that detour sign? Like, screw it, I'm going home. This is over. No, you take the detour. And then on the detour could be another detour, another fork in the road. That's called life. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, you keep going at it with the goal of going to that thing. You'll get there. It just didn't look like it how you first envisioned it when you plotted the route. So I think that's important to never quit and to keep that goal in mind constantly, always envision it, and know that any obstacle is really an opportunity to learn. And then you'll get to where you're going, and you'll also educate yourself along the way.
Oh yeah. And then you'll be able to later on to do the old thing, pay it forward, show someone else how to do it. I use the sports metaphor that when it gets time to that changing point where you've been butting your head, you're not getting anywhere. And again, instead of giving up, now what we do is we punt to give it a chance to readjust everything again, and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I by the way, my wife gets on me a lot about it, but I use football analogies quite a bit. I think there's a lot to be learned from football. Mm-hmm. I think, in specific, when you look at like professional level, these are elite players. They're the best. Yeah, they're the best. Period. And there's a lot to be gleaned from them. And when you look at a game, right? So yeah, they've got the 4 downs. Well, they don't make it, and they have to punt it away, just like you said. But they're not failures.
Yeah, they're not failures from it.
They failed in that drive. That drive failed. And so they just punt it, but they live to see another day because there's going to be another set of downs. And so now if you had someone who was a quitter, they would say, we can't win. And they just walk away. How many games have you seen where out, even without Tom Brady being the quarterback?
I was going to say the Atlanta game, World Super Bowl.
Oh my gosh! Right,
down by 26, and then came back.
Are you kidding me? Like, that was the most incredible game. What that shows me, of people like, well, statistically, that was like nothing is zero. You only make a 0 probability when you give up. Period.
Yeah.
I remember the Super Bowl, and by the way, Tom Brady had gotten a reputation for it. Like, dude, never count that dude out. Never count that guy out. Patrick Mahomes has the same. He has the same kind of reputation. Never count that dude out, man. Yeah. Never count him out. He can hit, like the last Super Bowl. Yeah, they got their ass kicked, But you think he's down? You think he's gone? You think he's going away? Patrick Mahomes will be back. Trust me.
Oh yes,
those Chiefs will be back
with a vengeance. That's right. Because
with a vengeance, because they're not quitters. They live in this different world, which I admire, and I try to model my life like that too. And I look at their lives, we can learn so much from that kind of thinking of not quitting and persevering through things. But yeah, I mean, those guys, they will play down to there's no more seconds on the board. And sometimes they pull it out. And so that tells you a lot. Like you don't get in your head. And Bobby, it also shows that most of life is here.
Yes.
It's right here. This is where it is right here. Right there your mind determines your failure or your success. Your entire life, reality itself is right here, period.
And I need to learn who quoted this, and there's different forms of it. But I go back to other people saying, someone had mentioned one time, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so we've got to.
That's so good. I love that.
Yeah, we've got to learn. And I had to learn this after getting disabled, to ask for help. All right. If we're stuck in an area, it's not what I want to say. It's not. Oh well, but I'll come up with it. But it's not a negative if you ask someone for help that may know more than you, that's been there before. Okay.
100%.
Yeah. But a lot of us have grown up. If I got to do it by myself, I got to do it on my own. Men don't cry, all that. That's bull crap, in itself too. That I had to learn the hard way. But yeah, don't be afraid to ask for that help when needed. So again, it's back to again just adjusting. And again, in football, you don't think Tom Brady and Holmes, you don't think they don't adjust at halftime and to prepare? So yeah. Be sure to do that.
Yeah, and they assemble a team of people. That's what they are. That's
exactly
teams, right.
Exactly,
and that's what you do in business. That's what you can do in life. Ability. And I've been this person too. By the way, I like to control everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to give that up a lot, and I have to have this. By the way, it comes down to having acceptance and taking ownership. By the way, I think trying to control everything is not a good trait.
No, it's not.
And by the way,
it's hard to give it up. It's hard to give it up, though.
Yeah. So,
but yeah,
one way I can tell you how I was able to do it is I reframe it. And every organization, every team needs a leader. And so instead of controlling it, you lead it. You guide people. So then you realize I can't do all these things. And I also don't know all these things. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to assemble a team of people that are smarter than me in this area, in that area, in this area. Because you have a goal. You create a mission statement. I've got a goal. I want to create this widget. Say you get into business, you have this idea. I want to create this widget. Well, I don't know how to do this and that. You find that person, but you're still the leader of it because you see the vision, you have the vision, you want to get there. So then you have to assemble the team that will help you get there. And then you can pay them. You can also inspire them to be a part of something that they're going to create this. That's why leaders are different than managers. Leaders have the vision. Leaders also inspire. Mm-hmm. And I think, look at Henry Ford. Great example. I think he was being sued, and they were trying to get him on that he didn't know everything about how to manufacture a car, like the nuanced details of like how to build a V8 engine. And he goes, "Damn right I don't." I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. He's like, and he was on the stand. "Damn right I don't. That's why I have this phone next to me on my desk of people that are smarter than me, and I pick it up and I hit a button, and that person there tells me how to do that."
That's right.
That's yes. But wait, and this person is smarter than him, but in that area, not in everything.
Exactly.
Just in that specific area. Again, look. I mean, we go back to football. Patrick Mahomes isn't the entire team. You have offensive coordinators up there looking at it. They've got everything planned out. They're reviewing all these things. It's not as if Patrick Mahomes couldn't be on the field and figure stuff out on the fly. He can, but it's a team effort that dives in. The analysis of the defense. They look at how things are going on, and they come up with plays and they do things. And but he's a dynamic leader like Tom Brady was. He has something about him. He can read things on the field. He can read a defense. I mean, that's what really separates kind of the great from the elite, is that ability to read.
That's right.
But that also translates into other different things, entrepreneurial wise, business wise, personal relationship wise, is having kind of this emotional intelligence of how to do things, how to work with people, how to be cooperative. That comes down to, again, right here. Everything's right there.
I agree. Yeah. Positive and learning. So Coach Bear Bryant said he would never hire a coach that didn't know more football than him. So, and that's the big Bear, Bear Bryant.
Yes.
Saying,
of course. Why would you want to have people that know less? You're trying to put a team together. Again, you're the leader. That in itself is valuable. Not everyone can be a leader.
That's right. So,
right.
All right, let's get into your writing here for a second here now.
All right. I know we're kind of all over the place here.
That's okay. We're still learning in here. It's okay. Nothing wrong with this. So first children's book put out, and then got to writing novels. Was this based on your experience in the military? Maybe a piece of it, and you've changed and wrapped it around your different routes. What got you to go from a children's book to doing novels?
Well, the children's book was more like a legacy project. I mean, at night I was like the one that would sit in bed and read all the stack of books on the nightstand of my daughters, and they loved it. And then we burned through that stack of books quickly, and then I'd go into like telling stories and sing, and they loved it. And so that then spawned this idea to create a children's book based on the stories I would tell them. And it was a nice legacy project for the girls.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
but that created this idea. I was like, wow, I have an idea. I put consistent effort and labor on it, and now I've got something tangible in my hand. Welcome to manifestation. That's how manifestation.
There you go.
Right. And I'm like, okay, what if I now do this to a novel? And so I did. And as far as my military experience, I think it's important for authors to always write what they know. Now, you're not going to know everything. This is where research comes into play. If things have lots of technical aspects to a book, or your world building, things like that. But yeah, I always include military characters in the book, and I roll in my past experiences, of course. And it makes writing easier when you write what you know.
That's right.
Ernest Hemingway is a fine example of that. Most of his books had kind of subject matter and talked about things that he personally knew about. And it made it easier for him to write compelling stories that were realistic in feeling, because he had lived lives like that.
Yeah. All right. So I'm interested in a little bit here, because I've written a few books, but never been in the bestseller. I give my books away way too many for people to buy and do whatever. I give it away too much. But so bestseller, author, and then you now have come up with your own publishing company that we mentioned earlier. So, but you want to go into more detail with?
No, yeah. So I mean, I've written many books, and then I gotten into a period of my life where I was like, okay, I wanted to kind of reach out into other spaces, and I was like, I just wanted to grow outside of just being an author, just publishing. But I mean, when you publish 40 books, that's a lot of content.
No, yes.
So I probably could say I was burnt out a little bit here and there, and so I wanted to get into some content that I thought would be easier to kind of do in that way. I called it like flipping content. So I was really I love podcasts. So I was listening to this one specific podcast, and I was like, and the host, she ended up becoming my partner later on, business partner. And she would get people on the air, and they would tell their stories about their own personal encounters with the paranormal and things like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I've always been fascinated by the paranormal. I'm interested, I'm also skeptical, but also interested. Curious, I guess is a better word. Anyway,
Yeah.
I was like, her content made for what I call flipping content. So I was like, maybe I could take these stories, put these stories into a book. It's like another medium of people telling their creepy stories. So I reached out to her. She thought it was a wonderful idea. So we put a book together and then we put it out. And she's got a pretty successful podcast. And she thought that, so a lot of people reaching out. It's like, oh my God, this book is great. How do I go about doing a book? So she brought that to me. And I was like, well, why don't we, my business mind just starts ringing bells. I'm like, well, I know how to publish and, I know how to produce a book. I know how to produce one and successfully market one. And I was like, well, why don't we when we join forces, you've got all the connections in the paranormal space. Why don't we create a publishing company and we'll publish all these people's books? And so that was 2019. And we created Beyond the Fray Publishing, which is we're a boutique, traditional publisher. And we only we niche down and we focus on the paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, true crime and ancient mysteries. I think it's very important for publishers to have a niche. We don't publish everything and we only do nonfiction. So we've dabbled in fiction before. It didn't necessarily work out, but that is then ends up creating Free Reign Publishing, which does a mix of both fiction and nonfiction in those similar spaces. But so that was the birth of Beyond the Fray Publishing, and again, been around since 2019.
I need to introduce you to a guy that I coached in baseball. He's opposite of me on a different team that I was coaching, but I think we got together in All-Stars. But he eventually become one of these paranormal investigators.
Researcher? Investigator,
research. And there's a group here in Tennessee. And I can't think of the name off the top of my head. I know his name is Steven. I think it goes by like Doogie on the show. And they've been on TV before. So I need to introduce you to him to see if maybe he wants see if they want to possibly do a book or something. So
yeah,
I'll get the information past it.
Yeah, those are people we have, as far as our authors, we have some fairly well known in that space, paranormal investigators and researchers, things like that. We're getting ready to go on a contract with somebody that's pretty large now too. And there he's got his own TV show on A&E and things like that. So that's what we do. Yeah. So he and his team have any interest.
I'll mention him to you and see if we can get y'all's information together. So
all right, sounds great. I appreciate that.
All right, G. Michael Hopf, I think we've done what we can. Hey, go ahead and give everybody your social media, how to find you, your publishing company. And one thing I want to ask about this, writing your novel, how long on the average does it take you to write one novel? I mean, I don't know if you're talking 800 pages, 500 pages. And I know it's going to be different, but that was the average. How long do you think, since you've done 40 of them, and you're still a young man, so I know you didn't do one a year, but the
most I've done in 1 year was 7 novels in 1 year.
Wow. Okay.
So,
were they like sequenced each other?
No,
totally different. Okay.
These were Westerns. When I got in, I jumped genres and got into writing Westerns. And I'm inspired by being a big reader of Louis L'Amour and Zane Grey. Yeah. So kind of along that theme, they're kind of a mashup from a inspirational standpoint of like Louis L'Amour, Zane Grey meets kind of Clint Eastwood Westerns, where you have like the anti-hero kind of thing. So it really depends. Like when I get into it was much easier for me to like hammer out as many books as I did, because all I was doing at the time was I was just an author. I was just a novelist.
Yeah.
Now I've got different hats. I'm a novelist as well as I'm the chief operating officer of 2 different 3 different companies now because I've launched
Mhm.
another company not that long ago. And I do consulting work. So I've got a bunch of different hats that I wear. So my
Yeah.
writing, the last novel I wrote was 2.5 years ago, and that took me around 4 months to write. But I've been known to hammer out a novel in about 6 weeks.
Wow. No,
But it's
I'm not.
possible. I mean, if you've got the story
Oh, I know it's
already,
all possible. I just don't see myself doing more than that fast. So
well, I can give you the easiest like advice on how to just get a book done, and that is set a time. Well, first treat your book writing serious, but stop calling it hobby. People,
mhm.
it's my hobby. Don't call it a hobby. Hobbies you do now and then.
Yeah.
Treat it like a business. Respect it like a business. Respect it like a job. And that you need to go to job. You need, like, if you've got a job and you got to
Yeah.
clock
Yeah.
in at 9, you got to be there at 9. There ain't no like if, ands, or buts, unless you know.
Yeah.
And so you set a time each day or whatever that is, your work schedule, say Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
that I go to my part-time writing job, and you set out a few hours, 2 hours, whatever that is, that block of time, and you write. And then within that block of time, give yourself a goal of I'm going to knock out 2,000 words a day, right? Now,
Yeah.
think about this. You did 2,000 words in a business week. That's 10,000 words. Now you do 4 weeks in a month.
Yeah.
You got 40,000 words. Now you do 2 months of consistency. You've got 80,000 words, and you more than likely have a novel.
Yeah.
You more than likely have a novel in that word count. Congratulations. So how you get from an idea to having a book in your hand, it's with consistency. Discipline is key. That's what sits your ass in the chair when you don't want to sit in the chair,
Definitely key. Yes.
right? Again, we do look at all sports figures. They talk about that. Motivation and inspiration only gets you so far. What
That's
gets
right.
you going every single day is discipline and having a goal. Have a goal,
Yep.
discipline, and then you layer in consistency of labor. I call it. You've heard of compounding interest. I call it compounding labor. Just compound the labor on top of each other, and you'll have the word count done. And then congratulations, you've written a novel.
There you go. Amen. So that fast too. So my first book, and it was on like 150 pages, but it took me 12 years. Like you said, I would write maybe a chapter, but then I wouldn't touch it for 6 months, and then maybe come back and write 4 pages, and then wouldn't touch it again for 3 months. And I've told people it's just how I got in the wheelchair and overcome and everything like that. But I told people, how we upgrade our computers. If I would have lost that manuscript, upgrading computers and moving those files over, if I'd have lost it, I wouldn't have started over. I know that. So, but but I may not have been seriously dedicated, but disciplined. But I had some discipline because I did get it finished. So,
Congratulations with that.
All right, G. Michael Hopf. All right, go ahead and tell people your again website, social media, any way they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so the best place to find me is at gmichaelhop.com. There, you'll see all my books are there, and a way to contact me is there as well. Feel free to reach out to me. I answer and reply to all my emails. All my books can be found on Amazon. Of course, they're the 8,000-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to books and publishing. But they're also in bookstores, Barnes & Noble, and other bookstores and other retailers. So you can just Google G. Michael Hopf, and all my stuff pops up.
And that Hopf is Hopf.
Yep. So yeah, so G. Michael Hopf, Hopf.
And I'll put information in the show notes as well for people to help find you. So,
well, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you being here again. I know we bounced around quite a bit, but again, we're still learning things from out of that. Last thing here, if we know people hurting and struggling, if you can leave us with a positive message, that'd be a blessing.
Yeah. I think I'll just we were kind of touching on the positive messages kind of overall in the theme of what we talked about today. And that is just never quit on yourself. If you give yourself a word that you're going to complete something or get over something, don't ever quit. Sometimes they're going to be tough, but you have to just pick yourself up. I know that people get mad when I say that sometimes. You pick yourself up. How dare you? But no one else really is going to at the end of the day. You have to take care of yourself. And if you're giving yourself the word that you're going to do something, honor that word to yourself and just don't quit and just keep moving ahead.
Sounds like a good one for me. So yeah, that's it. Just you got to bet on yourself.
100%.
Bet on yourself. And again, we're not going to win every battle, but we stay long enough, we'll get the war. So
that's right.
All right.
You may not win that. You may not get that first down. So you have to punt it away, right? But
that's right.
You're going to get another set of downs more than likely.
That's right.
And then you might get the touchdown.
And then he gives it back, live to play another down. So
exactly.
All right. Thank you there, Jeff.
That's right.
That's right. I almost did the other one. Jeff, appreciate it again. And we'll go from there. Everybody else, share this with someone you know that can use some inspiration, and maybe they have a book or a novel in their head and they want to have a way to give it out, and we can pass on here to help out. So everybody else, I'm Dr. James Perdue, the professor of perseverance. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your